Canada has been significantly impacted by the global opioid crisis. First Nations communities, including Aamjiwnaang First Nation, have raised significant concerns regarding opioid-related harms and deaths, including those affecting pregnant women and youth. To address these concerns, Aamjiwnaang was one of 13 First Nations that participated in a research project to learn more about the impacts of prenatal opioid exposure and how to support families better. Aamjiwnaang is a small community in southern Ontario, located close to the U.S. border and part of a known highway corridor of drug dealing and trafficking. Intergenerational trauma, such as the residential school experience, has had lasting impacts on the community and families, and contributed to the cycle of substance use and addiction within families, grandparents, parents, and now our younger generation. In this video, we share a story of resilience and transformation, and remind you that Aamjiwnaang is here to support you and to help us come together and heal as a community. While watching the video, please take a break or ask for support when you need.
Being in that, laying in my bed and not being able to get up and use the bathroom, or not being able to have a shower, not being able to, I couldn't even get out of bed to get my methadone. I was crawling, and I knew I was scared I was gonna die. I was scared because the hospital wouldn't help me, and I didn't know what was gonna happen to me. And I was scared that I was going to harm my unborn child with the sickness I had. I think that was my rock bottom. And the fear that I could have potentially, killed her. Ani, Sawa Zibikwa Indigenous, Aamjiwnaang and Donjaba. Hello, my name's Jessica Plain, and I'm from Aamjiwnaang First Nation. I think it's important to, share stories of success, and to let people know that people who struggle with addiction can recover. They can turn their life around. Not only do I want my family to see it, but I want people that are still struggling with addiction to know that it's possible. So I struggled with addiction for 17 years. I grew up in a very alcoholic household, and addiction is rooted deep in my family. Addiction started at a very young age for me, and it only progressed as I got older. And that went on for 17 years. And it started with marijuana. Then went to alcohol, then went to crack. I went to opioids, and went to meth. And I was so deep in those drugs that it tore my whole life apart. So, my parents were struggled with addiction and drank. There was a lot of domestic violence. There was a lot of parties. There was a lot of unsafe things, in a home where it's supposed to be safe. People coming in and out of our rooms at nighttime. My parents are drinking. A lot of trying to protect my little sister from people. I would hide her in the closet. And tell her not to come out. Our household wasn't always a dark spot, my parents would go through phases of getting sober and providing a home where there wasn't drinking. But those phases never lasted long, I ended up having my oldest child when I was 15. I had 2 boys after that. I lost all rights to my boys, and I ended up leaving home. I left my reserve, and I didn't look back. I chose to live on the streets and be homeless and be a part of a world that was just filled with hate and dark and hurt, pain, shame, and guilt. I told myself I was unworthy of love and that I didn't deserve any kind of happiness for choosing drugs over my children. It took away from the love they needed from me. It took away any good memory of a childhood, of maybe having a mother in it. My family worrying about me, wondering if they're going to get that phone call that I have passed away. I ruined relationships with my family, lying to them, hurt the hearts of my children. I spent a majority of my young adult life in and out of incarceration, and somewhere in my mind I had convinced myself I was okay with that. So I became pregnant with my youngest, who has just turned 7 years old, and I was in full addiction. I was a IV drug user, and my drug of choice was opiates. We did a pregnancy test, it came back positive, and I was scared. I was like, I'm not gonna bring another baby into the world when I can't be a mom to my other 3 children. And I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was scared. And my partner at the time was like, maybe this is your one chance to turn it around. I'm like, not possible. I'm like, it's not anything I could ever do. And mostly because I didn't want to deal with the hurt that I caused my family and my kids, and everything that I did wrong in my life. I didn't think I was able to take accountability for any of those mistakes, and I didn't want to face them. So, and with him planting that little seed of maybe I could do it, I started to do little things like get a health card. I never had a health card in, 15 years. So I went and got a health card, and I said, okay, now I got my health card. What can I do next? Maybe I'll get on methadone. So it was just one little thing at a time that I convinced myself I could do. And when I started doing those, got that health card, I, scratched that off my list, and got on methadone and scratched that off my list. And I'm like, what can I do next? Like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can get sober and have a life. And so my next step was I called CAS, and I told them that I was pregnant. And they said, yes, we have multiple phone calls about you being pregnant, and we are actually looking for you. So I, brought them to where I was living, and they helped me get into treatment, and it was extremely fast. It was like a week after I filled out a application and a referral, and they called and they said, okay, we got a bed for you. And I hung up the phone. It's like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to get sober. And so they called again, and I didn't answer it. And they called my partner, and he was like, they got a bed for you. We're leaving tomorrow, 6 a.m. And I'm like, holy shit. I didn't have anything. I just had, just a few outfits and not much of any personal items. And he took me out to Walmart, got me everything I needed. And 6 o'clock in the morning, we were gone to Windsor. I went to House of Sofrosine. And there I learned the very basic tools that I would need to cope with and manage triggers. I got there and I said, well, I'm here, I'm going to go full force. And so I went right to the scariest things I needed to talk about. Childhood trauma. I went right there. Those are the things I shared. And while I was there, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go full force. 45 days later, I graduated with honors and went home and was scared. The real work begins. Being home and in an environment where I used to use was extremely difficult. And so I started to do little things, one thing here, one thing there, parenting programs. Didn't know how to parent. I needed those skills. So I got in parenting program, life skills, circle of security, self-esteem, relationship building. Any program I could get in, I was in them. I did that for about 2 years. I needed all the tools to help me live this life I never lived. And that's what I did. And when I had all those tools, I had a friend ask me, what are you going to do next? I'm like, what do you mean next? Like, I'm sober. I didn't think I would even get here. Like, this is the greatest life, even though I wasn't doing anything. This is a good life. I'm at home. I'm being a mom, and I'm rebuilding those relationships with my family, my kids. I have visits with, 2 of my 3 children who I had left behind when I was in my addiction. So I thought, there's nothing greater than this. Nothing can beat this feeling. And then I met a friend, and she's like, what are your goals? Like, do you want to go back to school? And I'm like, what do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm like, I never thought of that. So I decided to go back to school. I went and got my high school diploma. And while I was doing that, I found out my mom got sick. She had stage 4 stomach cancer. So I moved her in my home, and I started to take care of her. And I almost dropped out. She made me promise to keep going no matter what. So I promised her that, and I kept going. I graduated and got my high school diploma. I cried. My friend said, "What next? What now?" And I did really well. And she's like, let's apply for college. What do you want to do in college? Like, go to college. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, okay, let's do it. She's like, what do you want to do? And I want to be a social worker. I want to help where I struggled and nobody heard me. So my goal was to work in addictions and mental health. So I applied for college, I got accepted, and I thrived in that program. I was like, oh my God. I didn't think I was smart enough to do anything in life. It's not anything I heard growing up, It's not something my mom knew how to say to me. So I graduated there. My placements I did at the Inn of the Good Shepherd. I did at the Women's Interval Home. And I loved them both. I could see myself working in both of those fields. And so there was an opening at the Women's Interval Home, and I applied. And I got that job. And it's so bizarre to me because even though I knew I thrived in school, I still felt like maybe like I didn't belong because my life back here was this long, and I had told myself for all those years I wasn't gonna achieve or amount to anything. And then shortly after that, I applied for a job on Amjinong. That was scary. That was even scarier. I applied for the prevention worker at the Child and Family Service Building, and I got that job. I have a healthy, happy home where my kids don't know what addiction looks like. They don't know what it's like growing up in a household where it's unhealthy. They hear those encouraging words that I didn't get to hear growing up. I love you, I'm proud of you. What do you want to be when you grow up? So I did go to treatment. But my actual healing journey started when my aunt asked if I wanted to go to ceremony. And I was nervous, but I went. But when I stepped in that lodge, I just cried and cried and cried, but something inside of me knew in that instance that I was going to be okay. And my spirit knew that this is exactly where I needed to be. And so I really started to heal there. And, I could see the changes in my prayers, and I was seeing them being answered. And so I kept going. I did my first year, and I did my second year, and, and now I'm going to my 7th year. And I have prayed to have my mom back in my life and to rebuild that relationship. And I think Creator's way of answering that prayer was bringing her home with stage 4 cancer. Because in that 1 year, we got to rebuild that relationship and have that mother-daughter relationship that I never had as a child. And she made sure to say sorry, and I made sure to say sorry, and she made sure to tell me every day she loved me. And that was something she struggled with. And, and we got to have that relationship. And we had 1 year with her before she passed away. And so I kept going, and I kept dancing, and, I prayed for my dad, and my dad's sober, and he's in my life. And I pray for my sister, and, she struggled really bad. And her mental health, and schizophrenic after her drug use. And she passed away in June. But also I think even there, my prayers were answered, because I would pray for her to not suffer. And I think that's how he answered it, because she was in so much pain. And so I keep going, and I keep praying for my family.
We all have a role to play in ending the opioid crisis in Umjanung. This means meeting people where they're at and reducing the shame, stigma, and judgment. To fully address prenatal opioid exposure, the holistic well-being of all community members, from preconception to the elder years, need to be supported. When the balance of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being is maintained or regained, cycles of trauma can be broken, leading to intergenerational healing and the reduction of prenatal opioid exposure. You're not alone. Umjanung First Nation has programs and services in place to support community members of all stages of life, including those impacted by addictions and prenatal opioid exposure. If you need help, please call